Hi guys, welcome back to the third week. Today I'm going to be taking you guys through some static street photography. So for me, when I travel, that's looking at things like bookshops or little nooks and crannies and areas, that kind of can go miss. So I really like to remove the people sometimes and focus on the different architectures that different places provide. One thing I really love about Paris is, everything from the doors to the windows to the balconies. So I'm excited to show you guys. So the great thing about static street photography is that you aren't focusing on the people, which means you can take as much time as you need. I find that it's an easier option when it comes to street photography because sometimes you need to take your time to kind of fix your settings, and when you're focusing on people, you may feel like you really need to get that shot and be quick. So it can be a lot of stress. Whereas with static street photography, you get to pick what you like, you get to focus on different things. It could be something as simple as the colors of a building, or you just like the way something is planned out. And that's what I really love. So when it comes to static street photography, I like to look for different things. So one of the things, especially when I'm traveling, is looking for that difference between London. So if I was to upload a picture and someone would be like, oh, you've gone away, it looks completely different, something brand new. And one of the things I like to really look for are the houses. Houses are so different here, especially in Paris compared to London. It could be things like little storefronts, just having like the different words, how the names are spelled. I love that, and it's just so much fun to kind of look around and just really take in the difference in the place that you're in, and that's why I really like shooting. So I'll look for things like that. I'll look for different things like coffee shops. When I come to Paris, I love taking pictures of the chairs, and it sounds so strange, but I just love the chairs, the tables, how everything's set out. It's very different. I mean, you can find it in London, but it's just not everywhere compared to Paris. I like comparing how this coffee shop right next to this one decided to go for a different color scheme. Little things like that is what I like to try and pick up on when I'm doing static photography. So today we're going to be taking you to a variety of different places. Some you may know, some you may not have heard of. Just because when visiting places like the Eiffel Tower, it can be amazing, but you may feel a bit overwhelmed as there's so many other people around you, or you may feel like you need to wake up at the crack of dawn to get there, to get that shot, and it's really not necessary when there's so many amazing places in Paris that you could pick from. So I've got my bag, I've got my camera, let's go shoot some stuff. Oh, this looks quite nice. I just want to quickly pop in here and take a few pictures. That's the thing I love about, static street photography is you don't know what you're going to come across, and as long as you kind of keep your eyes peeled, you come across some gems like this, which you won't really find online quite easily. So because the weather is really nice today, I've got my camera on quite standard settings, and I have got the ISO on 0, and it's around 200 as well. And yeah, that's what I like about this time of year, is that I don't really have to play about with the camera too much, other than when it's a bit too bright. Then it makes it a bit harder. But I thought this would be quite nice, as I'm very into statues and just knowing a bit more about them, and especially in France where there's so much history. I just thought this would be a great find because it's just off the street. You wouldn't really expect to see this when walking around. So I thought, why not quickly take a picture of this just to add it to the collection, and I could even drop this somewhere and someone would be quite surprised to find it. So when I'm shooting street photography, it can be really easy to feel like I need to take pictures of everything, especially when I'm traveling. And that's a big issue I've kind of learned that I need to stop doing. It can be so easy to think, oh, like everything's an opportunity. But when I get home and I look through the pictures, I'm like, this isn't really interesting. If you looked at it, you couldn't really tell it's Paris. Kind of like these buildings here, like other than the, balconies, you may be able to tell it's Paris, but it could be anywhere in the world. And that's why I love looking for the old architecture that still lingers in Paris. And as well as that, things like the sun, being directly on it, it makes it a bit harder to shoot. And I might stand there and force myself to kind of, play around with my settings until I feel like it's good enough. But I just don't enjoy the shot, and I really always regret wasting that time trying to make it happen just so I can have the content when really my heart's not in it. So I really do believe in taking your time to actually just find places that you really love. You don't have to shoot everywhere. It doesn't have to be everything. Just really focus on what's important to you, what really grabs your attention, what you think is interesting. You don't have to just shoot anything because, I'm in Paris. Oh, someone will see this and say it's Paris. It's up to you. It's what your heart kind of really calls to. And that's the thing I love about street photography, is what you find interesting in that moment that you decide to capture, whether it's someone, whether it's a building, whether it's a storefront, whether it could even be things like the chairs. Like I said, I like to, really look at, like, if I see a bunch of chairs stacked, I think it's really nice. The way they balance, the way they're arranged sometimes. It could be something as simple as that means a lot to you or you find really interesting, that people might actually find really interesting too once edited. So we have literally walked just 2 minutes down from where I previously was, and I am feeling so much better about this location. It's a lot more me, and there is so much to look at and to pick from. And the great thing about the Canon camera is that it picks up color amazingly. That's why when it comes to editing, I do a lot minimal edits, just because, you know, in terms of things like the greens, the darks, the light, and the contrast, my camera does all the work, especially when we have weather like today where it is amazing. I just have to play around a little bit, tweak a few things, and that's it. But yeah, I'm so excited because, as I mentioned, there is a lot of chairs here. I love the little coffee shop front. I love how everything's set out, so I'm excited to kind of play with that and also see what else it has to offer, because there's a lot more movement going on as well. So with the buildings, having that contrast of the stillness of the building and like people moving about, there's just a lot more going on. So what I love about my 24-70 lens is that it helps me when I'm walking about, because when it comes to street photography, you don't really know when a moment's going to happen. You don't really know when you're going to take a picture. So the great thing about it is that it helps me zoom if something is across the street, if I see some art that I really like, or if I see a storefront or anything, it helps me be able to zoom in and get that shot. Or if I'm already close by, then I don't have to zoom. I can just, you know, enjoy that shot, and it just gives me that range, because again, with street photography, you don't know when that moment's coming, so I don't have to faff about and change out my lenses. I can just have this one. I can be on the go and not have to think about changing, dropping my backpack, being in the way, or, you know, just having my stuff exposed while I'm changing. I can just have this lens on, be happy, and be merry and on my way. If you're looking for a great lens to start with, I recommend a 50mm lens. That's what I started with, and quite a lot of people start with, because it's very affordable. I got my Canon one for a very good amount, and the great thing about it is that, you know, it may be fixed, but you can move your body around to get those shots that you need, and it's just a great starting with, you know, especially if you want to do portraits when doing street photography. I think it's great for that, and it's just easy to have on, and it's easy to switch off as well, but it's one that I really do recommend just having in your kit. Regardless of how often you may use it, it's just a great one to start with completely. So we are now at Gallery Vivienne. It's one of my favorite places to come when I'm in Paris, and that's because the place is just beautiful when it comes to the architecture, the things that are in here. It's got so much light during the day, and that's great because, again, I can keep my camera on pretty standard settings and I don't have to do too much because my camera will pick it up, which is great. There is so much to look at in terms of the ceilings to the floors to everything this place holds. It's amazing. And what I also love is that, again, my 24-70 lens is great because if I want to kind of zoom out and take a picture of the whole kind of landscape, I'm able to do that, and I'm able to zoom in on little things like, for example, behind me there's a rack of postcards. I'm able to zoom in and show the different ones that they're selling, and that's great for when you're traveling. And again, it makes it so much easier to take that shot because it is a very popular place. You will find that there are other people here trying to take shots, so it helps you be really quick at taking those shots and being really decisive about what you want to take, and that's what we love about street photography. So I'm going to start with taking some pictures here. One of my favorite things to take pictures of when I'm on holiday and doing, static street photography is books. Bookstores. This is one of my favorite ones. I had it saved on Instagram, and last time I came I didn't get the shot I wanted, so I'm going to try again today because the sun is shining and it just makes it a lot easier to shoot. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll probably start over here, and the great thing is I probably will zoom in to get the detail because I love the book front, also just to kind of show the variety of books they do have on sale, which is amazing, and just so you can see the kind of titles, authors, even just the fact that they've been arranged alphabetically. Little details like that can be so great to pick up and show on camera. So the great thing about shooting inside, and especially as it's brighter, is that with the aperture a lot more light is coming in, so it's a lot easier to work with. And also I'm having the choice of whether I want to zoom in, zoom out, because it is quiet at the moment. So that's the great thing about being able to take pictures, especially when you're doing things that are static. You're able to take your time and think about things, because when you're shooting with people, especially if it's not people you've kind of stopped to ask for a photo, you kind of have to wait, and you don't have that time to kind of just think oh, I don't really like it when I kind of did a full frame picture. I wish I kind of zoomed in. And that's the great thing about doing static photography. Like, you can literally think, okay, I'll try it up close, I'll try from far away, I'll try from this angle of the room. You have time to really think about that. That's why I think it's really easy and a great place for people to start, especially if you're trying to build that confidence. And it's just a great way to keep practicing because those buildings aren't going anywhere, you know, unless you've gone past the closing time. That's the only thing you need to really worry about. So I'm just going to have a quick look at my photos because, as I mentioned, I've got all the time in the world when it comes to getting the perfect shot. I've taken a range of pictures, so I've kind of zoomed out for a few, zoomed in, and to be honest with you guys, I actually feel like I really prefer the pictures where it's zoomed in, just because, again, there's so much more detail, and compared to zooming out, some people may be interested in seeing the books that are actually being shown, and I've got that in these pictures. You can see the names and the titles on the first few books, and I love that. So this library this bookshop is one of my favorites as well, and it's got a range of things. It's got like postcards to take home, cards, and actual books. And one of my favorite things is just these traditional book fronts that you see when you're in France, and I love it with, you know, the red font of the books. So I'm just going to take a few pictures of that. Again, I'm going to play with zooming out and zooming in just because there's so much detail that can be put up here, whether it's the books in the background or if it's the books out here, or if it's the, you know, statues that they've got on display. I think it's great to kind of show all the stuff that this has to show. So again, I'm just starting very zoomed in, just so you can see the title of the book, which I do enjoy. There are a few books on show, and I'm slowly just going to zoom out, play with the different options and see how much I prefer, because sometimes things can be too zoomed in and you won't really realize that until you've played about, which is what I really enjoy. And then also it kind of just changes the depth of field, which is great, which I really appreciate and think people can really enjoy. So I've zoomed all the way out now with my lens, and then what I want to do is maybe just go a bit fuller and take more of a shot of the actual shot now, because I've taken a few more detailed shots. So it'd be great to kind of just take a few steps back, have a look at it and go again. And the great thing with a lens like this, and especially with a Canon camera, is I get to pick what I want to focus on. So whether I want the postcards to be in focus or whether I actually want the background to be in focus. And my favorite thing to do is play with both again and look at the pictures afterwards and decide which one I prefer more. And having had a look at the pictures now, I definitely think that I prefer the pictures that are zoomed out. It just gives you so much to look at. Like, in terms of spending time looking at a picture, I would spend personally like 3 minutes looking at this, taking everything in, whereas with the really close pictures, there's not much to look at. You kind of look at the picture and think, oh, it's just a bunch of books. I don't really need to spend time looking at the photo. So I'm done with this part, but I just want to take you guys around the corner because there's a beautiful composition there, and the ceilings are amazing as well as the tiles, and I thought it would just be fun to shoot, especially zoomed out, because again, this lens allows me to do so I'm going to go do that. So I've just quickly stopped to take a picture here. As you can see, there's amazing lights coming down. There's so much light coming from the ceiling, and you can even capture the birds literally flying by if you're very lucky, which I think is an amazing shot. You've also got kind of people in the background, so you're taking it from static to having a bit of movement, having people in the background. And then there's just so much detail here, it would be a shame not to take a picture. So if you're someone that's starting in street photography, it can be really hard to think of how to frame a picture. And I think the great thing about Gallery Vivienne is that you've got this great example in front of you where it's a kind of thing where it's symmetrical. So you've kind of got the same thing going on both sides, and it makes it easy for you to frame that shot. And that's one thing I love. And another thing I love about Paris and France is the coffee culture, the cafe culture, restaurant culture. Everyone's always sitting outside, it's nice and warm, and that's an easy shot to start with. So I'm just going to show you guys kind of how I set up, and I think would be a great way to start off if you're someone that's really stressed out and you're not getting the shot you want. I'm just going to play around with my ISO a little bit and just bring it down into the minuses real quick, just because it is quite harsh when it comes to the sunlight bouncing off of it. And it's great because it just makes such an easy shot to start with, especially if you're someone that's kind of trying to figure out what kind of framing you like, what you like to focus on. This is a great way to start. It makes it easy for you because you've got the same thing going on. So as long as you're kind of stood in the middle, it's very easy to work with. And then sometimes, again, you have that thing where people are just moving in and it just adds movement to it. If you're a bit bored of how it looks, you just get the people involved. And from static street photography, we go into having people involved, and it's just street photography, which is great. You can also play about with zooming in and out to get more details and more people and more things involved, or you can zoom in, which is what I'm doing. So I'm choosing between the two. and it just makes it a lot easier. I've even zoomed in completely now where I just have the arches and you can see the sign that says Gallery Vivienne. And the lighting today is gorgeous. There's a lot of shadow to play with, but you can also still see further down into the hall, which I think is a great choice for shot. So I've decided to leave. As we all know, with travel and street photography, things can get really busy, and it did, and I wasn't really getting the shot I wanted. So I've decided to move about because, again, Paris has so many amazing places to pick from. So why spend too long in one place trying to get that single shot one day? You can find so many shots in any other place, really, that'll be less busy. So I'm going to move around somewhere new and show you guys a few other gems that I come across. So I've talked about how symmetry can be a great way to kind of start when you're looking at framing. Another thing I kind of like to look out for sometimes is when there are duplicate of things. So looking for pattern in things, whether there's 2 of things, 3 of things, or things are just arranged in the same way. It can be a great thing, an easy way again to just create opportunities for yourself and photos for yourself. So that's what I'm on the hunt for right now. So I found a great opportunity. There are 2 windows that are open, and right below it there are 2 lights as well, and that's a great example of just finding a pattern in something. And it's a great shot, easy shot, especially when you're just struggling to really find something to inspire you. Just start looking at patterns and then you'll kind of start to notice them without thinking too hard. I'm going to start by zooming in with my camera and just trying to focus and align it all up if I can. So I may start with zooming in just so you can really see, the 2 windows being open. And I'm just going to bring my ISO up just because, again, I would like more light and for the picture to be brighter. And as you can see, there are 2 windows open, and if I just frame myself and move it just as this other light's getting in the way, it's now making it 3, which is great. So I can have 2 windows open, 3 lights involved, which is a fun, different way to look at things. And also it just gets the architecture and the buildings into the picture while having something else to also look at, which is fun. So behind me is another great example of repetition. You've got all the doors going down, they're all green, they're all shaped the same, and this is just another example of why you should be looking around and taking in your surroundings, because this is a great find. It's easy to do, it's easy to start off with, especially if you're struggling. Sometimes it takes me a while to get into the photography. Like I hate the first few shots I take. And then after a while I'm comfortable, after I've practiced, I start getting those shots. By the end of the day, that's when I'm really getting into it. But again, this is like a small warm-up or activity or exercise you can kind of practice to just get yourself going, get things moving, and just start clicking away. So I'm going to try and take a shot to show you guys the rule of 3 and the repetition that is going on behind me. So for this, as there are works going on in the street, I'm going to try and do a landscape picture rather than a portrait, just so you can really take it in and get it all in, as I think it would be a shame to kind of get rid of it and just waste this opportunity. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom all the way in for this, just again to get rid of all the building work around me. And with this, again, the lighting is great, so I don't really have to play around with my settings too much, and I'm just going to try snapping away just so you guys can see the repetition going on. Again, as this is a public space, you have people coming in, which again adds movement to the picture, which is great, which is a lot of fun to work with and can make a picture. Just going to slightly zoom out just so you can get the other one involved as well. So we've come to the end of the 3rd week where we've been looking at street photography, and it's been fun. We've looked at architecture, making the most of storefronts, things like looking for repetition in things, looking at framing, and just easy wins, and it's been fun. One of the things I would really advise when it comes to static street photography is taking your time, because 1, the buildings aren't going anywhere, so really just have fun, play about, try different things. Try starting with zooming in and then zooming out, maybe changing where you're standing, changing the point. Even if you have a few lenses to play with, changing around the lenses that you're working with that day. Just have fun, because you have time, and you may not end up liking what you start with, but by the time you've had a think and a play about, you may really enjoy it. The second thing I'm going to say, which is really weird and it sounds completely against what I just said, is also not wasting time. If a shot's not working for you and you don't actually like it, feel free to move on. Not every place we step and start in is what we're going to love. So have fun, walk, and don't give up so easily. If you don't like a place, walk for a few minutes and you never know what you might find. There may be a gem around the corner, and if you gave up, you might not have found it. And the last thing I kind of want to talk about is being basic is actually very okay. So sometimes you may go to a place and be like, oh, I don't want to take the same shot that everyone else has. But those shots can be really great, and it's all about, how you maybe edit things afterwards that makes it your own spin and your own twist on things. So if you're really struggling, just start with the basics, like warm yourself up, just to get yourself going, and work your way up from there, because you'll find by the end of the day, you'll be like, actually, I'm really getting into things, because it does take time, especially if you're someone like me who doesn't get to shoot every single day, and I don't always feel like I know what my camera is doing. I don't feel like I know everything about my camera. So especially when the weather changes a lot, like when it's really sunny, I do myself have to kind of sit there and think, okay, how am I going to get my settings to work? And I get really stressed out sometimes, because I'm like, oh, I feel like my camera is working against me, and it's nothing personal to do with you. Sometimes we just need to kind of sit down with our cameras more and practice, and by the end of the day, we've nailed it, we've got it. That's all we have to do, just take our time and think it through. So that's the end of this episode. See you guys next week for the last part.